Very happy to see some familiar faces and very happy to meet those of you I didn't have opportunity yet. And I hope that this very brief introduction would or will motivate you to maybe some further cooperation or getting in touch with this topic, which is not easy. However, it's important to somehow address it also at workplace. I will try to share my presentation with you now, and I would start with some brief introduction of myself. As it was mentioned, I'm coming from Rosa Center for Women, which is a non-governmental organization providing services for victims of domestic violence. Myself, I'm a psychologist, psychotherapist by profession, and I'm working with victims of violence more than 20 years now already. And first of all, as I mentioned, I'm coming from the non-governmental organization. We provide our services since 1993. So last year we celebrated 30 years. And we have registered 3 types of social services. One is information and counseling center, where we provide face-to-face counseling for victims of domestic violence and intimate partner violence. We operate crisis center, which works 24/7. And in this crisis center, we can provide crisis accommodation for 7 days. And we are operating 24/7 free of charge hotline for women experiencing domestic and gender-based violence. The third service that we provide is shelter with confidential address, because for women who seek help in our services, they are usually in very high danger of further violence. So the secret address of the stay, it's very important for them. So also the crisis stay and the stay in the shelter is in confidential address. So this was just brief introduction, so you know the background and what we are doing. And I would very shortly just refer about what is domestic violence and violence against women. I know that all of you have some idea, imagination, what is domestic violence, but I would like to point out difference in definitions a little bit. In general, domestic violence as such, it can come from anyone in the family and be directed to anyone. So it also includes transgenerational violence, means violence also against children, or violence on grandparents or senior members of the family. And most of the definitions includes the taxative naming of the forms of violence. And here I would like to underline that we are not talking only about physical violence, which is usually the image that comes to mind of people if we talk about domestic violence, but we are talking also about psychological and emotional violence, economical violence and abuse, and also sexual violence. And for me, very useful definition of intimate partner violence is the one that goes to the state of feeling that it's the impact of the violence on the victim. And this definition says that it is behavior that causes one partner to fear the other. That's the important part of it, that through using the violence, one of the partner is building the position of power and control, and is building the feeling of fear in the victim. So this is very important part, and I'm mentioning it because if we do not understand well this dynamic, then we can't provide effective intervention and support. So that's why I included this definition into the introduction. I think it's also good to mention that if we talk about intimate partner violence, the statistics shows that the majority of victims are women. It's about 90%, but of course, it can also influence men, and they are victims of intimate partner violence in 10%, we can say. So if I would just put some facts about domestic violence in Czech Republic from the study of European Union, from the FRA study. We know that 1 in 3 women in Czech Republic have experienced with some form of violence in their relationship during the lifetime. So statistically, maybe you don't know about anyone. You can say, this is a topic that doesn't touch me really. I don't know anyone with this experience, but statistically, if you know at least 10 women, you know someone who experienced some type of violence in the relationship. And that's also important because if in your company, there are women employees, there is really a big chance that you have there someone who experienced violence in the past or now ongoing violence, because from the same study we know that during the last 12 months, so in the current last year, more than 300,000 women in Czech Republic were afraid to go home because the home was not the safe space for them. It was space where they experienced violence. Also, what is important to mention is the economical impact of violence. And from the study of Governmental Office of the Czech Republic, we know that the costs of domestic violence on the public finances are 14 billion Czech crowns per year. This includes the costs of police intervention, of medical treatment, of sick leaves, or incapability to go to work after the violence. So this is really a huge impact on economic also. And in this amount, we did not count the economical costs that each of those victims has to bear for example, psychological treatment, for costs of the lawyers, etc. So these 14 billion Czech crowns is only part of the real costs. We also know that most of the victims don't turn and seek help at the police. We know that most of the victims, if they share their experience or seek some help, they usually turn to some family members or friends or colleagues at work. These are the most usual persons where they turn. So this is also a reason why employers have a big chance to support and help victims of domestic violence. Well, probably all of you can imagine the negative impact of violence on those who are experiencing it. Of course, it has negative impact on well-being, on psychological state of the victims, because as the violence usually lasts for several months or years, as the cycle of violence is present in the relationship, we know that it has enormous impact on psychological state of the victims. Many of them have anxiety problems, depressions, problems with concentrations. It has also impact on their health, either in terms of immediate injuries that are a result of the violence, or many studies shows that victims of domestic violence are at much higher risk of chronic diseases, which are connected to a high level of stress. And all this, of course, may have influence and impact on the work performance. If we speak about the impact, we can't say that there is a type of like typical victim and typical reactions. There is high individual variability of the impact and of how the victim deal with the situation, and if there are some traumatic responses or not. It doesn't depend only on the personality or on the victim itself, but it depends mainly on the forms of the violence that she experienced, on the length of the experience with violence, on the profile of the perpetrator, and also on the availability of support system. We know that if victims have some support system around them, that the impact is less damaging. Also, what I want to mention is that one fact is the cycle of violence and the forms that are presented. On the other hand, there are also some aggravating risk factors that can higher the risk of serious or severe violence. And sometimes, unfortunately, and we know it also, that in Czech Republic every year several tens of women are murdered in cases of domestic violence. So I would like to highlight one of these aggravating factors, which is if the victim decides to leave the relationship. So this is really a period of high risk for escalating the violence. If we speak about the situation when the victim lives in the violent relationship, so she stays with the perpetrator, what we can see, how it can influence the work performance. We know that many women are restricted by their violent partners just to go work. There are some barriers, locking up, confiscating work tools, hacking into work telephone or computer, sending emails or messages from the working tools in the name of the victim. So these are direct impacts on the working performance. It may result in late arrivals, unexcused absences at work, or canceling the meetings, etc., because the victim is not able to go to work or to leave the house, etc. Another impact can be for those perpetrators who are controlling and want to know about the victim. They are really like trying to find out where she is, with whom, etc. So these are unwanted phone calls to the work, checking what, for example, on the with the colleagues, if the victim is at her workplace, etc. Some prohibitions to participate at some activities at work, etc. We know that the violence doesn't end at the point when the victim leaves. As I already mentioned, the period of breaking up the relationship is one of the most risky. And we know that if the perpetrator can't have physical control over the victim, they try to get some other forms of control. So usually it switch into stalking or intimidation by discrediting in the workplace, sending the intimate pictures or videos to colleagues or employer, or even harassment in the workplace in situation when it is open space or shop or a hospital where everyone can enter. So we have a lot of cases of even physical violence at the workplace. We also know that there are some tragic cases of murder committed at the workplace of the victim in Czech Republic. So we see clearly that if the perpetrator doesn't have control over the victim at home, then if he knows that she is working somewhere, then he turns the attention to the workplace. Why? Because the perpetrator wants to maintain the power and control over the victim. And of course, if the victim has a job, it's endangerment for the perpetrator, because it gives her some financial, economical independence, and it's important for her to be able to live, to start the new life without violence. So he very often tries to involve the employer in the situation and to somehow manage that she lose the job, so she stays dependent economically on the perpetrator. So, saying this, what we can do and where we can start as employees, as employers. If this topic would resonate with you and you would say, okay, this is maybe something we should look at, from the experience with cooperation with other companies, Vodafone, IKEA, etc., we know that there are several easy steps that can help to implement some support for victims of violence. The first step is raising awareness about domestic violence and gender-based violence internally in the company. It's very important step because it is a part of building the trust of the employees, so they know that this topic is not taboo in the workplace, that it's something which is possible to talk about, and that there are some people who I can turn to, where I can seek help. And also it may help for those who are experiencing violence to identify the forms of violence and to name the problem, really. The other step is to formulate and prepare some internal routine or procedure. In other words, what we can offer to those who are affected by domestic violence as employer. And then another pillar is training for employees, how to recognize, how to name the problem, and how to react. So in other words, how colleagues can help. So the help can have different levels and layers, and it's important to put all of them together to be efficient. Just short examples of what can be included in the internal routine or what we can offer. And I'm sure that Jana will speak about it from their experience in more details. But just such small things as, for example, changing of the phone number, email address can be a big protection from the online harassment from the perpetrator, or temporary change working hours. If the perpetrator knows that the victim works from 9 to 5, then there is high possibility that around 9 or 5, he will be around the workplace. So if we can change and give some flexibility, it may be an important part of the safety plan. Sometimes it's necessary to change the workplace. So, for example, if the victim works at one shop and we have a chain of shops, if we can, for temporary time, change the location where she is working, or change of parking place, because the perpetrator may know that this is reserved parking place for the victim, and it can be also a place where the danger of some violent attack can occur. Another possibility can be to escort or to accompany the victim on the walk to the public transport, or from the bus to the work, or from the work to the metro station, that she is not going alone, and that there is someone who can at least be as a witness of the situations. In some cases, they need to have possibility not to take the annual leave, but to have some days off if they need to visit psychologist, go to court, if they need to move from the house with the perpetrator to the safe place. Or in our experience, if we have women in our crisis center, it's really in a high-risk period when it's not safe for the victim to go to work. So if they can have paid days off and just to have a space to somehow go through this crisis situation and stay safe, it might be very helpful. We know that in some cases, this was not allowed, and it was the situation by the end of the year. So the victim already did not have any further days of annual leave, and the perpetrator followed her from the workplace, and she had to change the way to the crisis center. She called our colleague. We had to pick her up. So the last thing that I wanted to mention is that there are already companies and employers who are very active, and that in November last year, we signed with some of them the Charter Against Domestic Violence. And through this, we are bringing together the nonprofit sector, business, and also public administration, because, for example, Ministry of Interior is one of the signatories of the charter, so they are also now incorporating the procedures for their employees. And I just wanted to mention this because I saw some companies that signed the charter here. So thank you for this support, and I just want to welcome anyone else who would like to join and to find out more about this. So I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Shall I continue with the example from Vodafone, and then we'll have the Q&As? Lovely. So
yes, perfect, Jani. The stage is yours.
Lovely.
You have like 8-10 minutes, and then we
Lovely.
will open
I'll
the
be
questions.
quick. So before the presentation gets on, yeah. So let me just start with massive thanks to Broňa, who's been a great and significant help on our journey. And if you are considering to open this topic in your companies, do it with experts because they have the experience, the knowledge, and can really help you with implementing the policies with awareness, etc. So I'll jump through some slides. Until recently, or still, we get the question, why should companies address the topic of domestic violence? This is purely a private matter. It doesn't belong to work. As you can see here, and we are sorry for Czech slides. I only realized 20 minutes before we started it will be in English, but happy to follow up if English version is needed. In 2018, we ran a survey across seven countries where Vodafone operates. We asked respondents from different businesses, different seniority. The respondents were both male and female, so you can see every third personal experience with domestic violence. So the same Czech numbers, every third female experiences domestic violence, and as Broňa said, also men are victims. Up to 10% of all victims is believed are men. And actually, these victims came from different businesses, as I said, different seniority. So this also breaks the bias that the domestic violence only impacts, and I hear this bias quite often as well, for example, women from like lower social background. So it can really impact anyone. So anyone can become a victim. And the impact on work, you can see that, and Broňa already mentioned it, for almost 40% of victims said it had impact on their productivity at work, on the attendance, 22%, 13% had to leave work. So as you can imagine how hard it is to get talents to your companies. And if you lose talent because of this, then company suffers because they have to hire new people, onboard them, etc. People said that it had impact on their careers. They were actually afraid to open topic at work. There were no any support programs in place. They didn't feel it's actually okay. They felt ashamed because of what was happening to them. And 2/3 felt safe at work. They said only at work they could be themselves. So Vodafone took all this in consideration. We implemented a program. Then actually COVID came and it confirmed that the situation hasn't changed at all. Numbers remain the same throughout COVID. And actually more than half of the victims experienced increase in domestic violence during the lockdowns as they were locked in their households with the aggressors. And the psychological form of domestic violence was mentioned as the most frequent one, but there are, of course, more forms of domestic violence. I'll get to the program that we introduced in 2019 across all companies where we operate. Awareness, awareness, awareness is the basic. It all starts with it. You want to create a safe place for people to be actually able to talk about this topic or ask for help. Let them feel that they can come to you for work. We spend at least 8 hours a day at work, and unfortunately we don't leave the problems behind the door. It would be lovely, but unfortunately we don't. So we started with regular sessions led by Bronia, many of them. As was already mentioned, days off are important to help victims. So the situations for various reasons. So not only we offer up to 10 days to victims, but also we want our colleagues to have open eyes, and if they see anything, to be able to reach out, talk to their colleagues, offer help, as peers are often willing to be more open to their peers instead of coming to HR. So that's why we are developing actively the group of what we call ambassadors who fight against the domestic violence. And we want to have those people across the businesses, across all units, to be able to talk to their colleagues. It was important to be able to individually address various needs. So you can go with changing phone numbers, email addresses, working hours. If you have, and it was already mentioned here, people working in, for example, retail, what we did in one case, that we moved a colleague closer to the backstage, and also the security service was alarmed to be on call if help was needed, and also colleagues were informed what the aggressor looks like, so they would be able to call for help if he came to the store. So once you implement general policies or forms of support, then also this one-to-one approach addressing individual needs is also important. Many companies have the assistance program, but that is available 24/7. If you have so, ensure they are also able to talk to victims and help them out. But what is also important are the relevant organizations that actually work with the victims. So Rosa is one of the biggest one in the Czech Republic. If I would ask you to leave this meeting with one thing, that would be the application Bright Sky. If you are lucky enough not to be victim yourself right now, you never know who around you might be your colleagues, friends, family members. You just perhaps don't know it yet. In the application, you'll find many useful contacts, tests, tips, what to do. And I think the more you know about the topic, the sooner you might be able to help people around you. And let me just conscious of time. This is just an example of how actually quickly the situation was solved when we actually had the support program in place. Colleague actually noticed that something is happening with his colleague, and he came to us. We talked to Rosa, and within a couple of weeks we managed to get this colleague to Rosa, and the solution took I would say a couple of months before the aggressor was moved out. On the other hand, I have an experience from a colleague on the right side of the slide who went through the same situation, serious physical and abuse. And what she says that colleagues at work knew, or perhaps saw that something was going on, but actually no one asked. And this can be, again, that people don't know how to ask, don't know how to offer help, don't want to get into the situation where they might not be comfortable. So that's why the awareness, offering a program to people, how to talk actually to victims, how to offer help is critical. This is an example of campaign we did in the loose, both male and female, as we already highlighted that also men can be victims, where actually we promote the internal program, the application Bright Sky, And by giving simple question to people, we just encourage them to think whether they might not be victims themselves or think about situations they might be seeing around them. This is just an example of the SharePoint, which is accessible to all our people 24/7 with all the recordings, all the contacts to ambassadors, where actually people can find tailored help. This is the visual of the Bright Sky, as I said. If you don't have it installed yet, please do. You never know where you might need it. And if you are interested in learning more about the topic, what actually, as a Vodafone, we are proud of always being not only able to help internally, but also externally. So a couple of years ago, we launched what we call Academy Against Domestic Violence. And we run half-day workshops where other companies share their best practice. And you learn actually about different types of help, how you can support your colleagues. You get also great insights from Bronia. So if you are interested to learn about this topic, join us. And last but not least, everyone is welcome to sign the charter, where you actually give a great signal to your employees that you are strongly against domestic violence, and you are actually asked to implement some form of internal support program.